And welcome back, dear viewers. You know, that was a great report, and this collaboration will focus on carbon conversion, hydrogen technologies, and energy efficiency, accelerating Kuwait's and the region's transition to low carbon economics. So now let's welcome Abdallah Dalab, Strategic Relationships Director. I want to welcome you on this program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me in again.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you about something, is that how did the collaboration agreement with the Fraunhofer impact potential sustainability in the projects in Kuwait?
Okay. Since we had that agreement, our approach has changed a lot because by definition, by introduction, any environmental project is basically a cost to any industrial partner. Today, the way we present those projects, we present them differently because we show the economical value of those projects. We have tried and we have approached several industrial partners. The first approach reflected cost to them. They haven't seen the economic value of those ecological projects. So the approach has been different. Now we don't just jump into finding solutions. We sit with the client, with the support of Fraunhofer and the researchers of Kessler, to show the pre-feasibility, to show the technological solution driven by the economics of those projects. So now the whole approach is set differently. We go step by step to show that there is a proof of concept that we need to work on. There is a technology to show, and that technology should bring value to those investors. So the approach has been totally different because now we are a larger machine of scientists and economists who can show the industrial partners the benefits of those projects.
And so what would you say changed since the inception of this agreement until the situation now?
I think we've been able to create demand because we have a heavy machine behind us. When you approach those source of carbon, what we call source of carbon, we didn't have solutions for them. Today, when we go, we know that we can present technical solutions, which was absent. The talk about sustainability has become more of a fashion and trend rather than being a real solution on the ground. When we go today, we go confident that we have something to offer the client. The client wants to see how this problem can be solved, which we did not have before. This is the main change today, that we managed to create the demand because we have in our domain of offering technologies to solve those problems.
And also, I'd imagine, as with a lot of things, when it comes to projects, the difficulty is turning that into reality.
Yes.
Yeah, so what would you say is, these projects, these environmental projects can be turned into reality? Like, how would that process go like?
If those projects will have to turn into reality, they have to have a commercial sense. And to start that process, we need to show examples. People will have to see those projects on the ground to see the different angles and different dimensions from where the country eventually benefits from. And I can give examples when the time comes. Those projects, they are real. They have been proven in the basically Western world. What we are fighting today are classical conditions like subsidized utilities.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter that we spend hundreds of millions of dollars, for example, for transporting waste from our houses to the landfills. We don't mind emitting emissions without any calculations. What will make this real is to have commercial sense and is to see one or two prototypes and see those prototypes from different angles by which will deliver value to the country.
Yeah.
This is how they become real.
And once it becomes real, what about its implementation? Like, is that a difficult process? Do the resources, the materials and everything, is that something hard to obtain, or is that something all within our grasp?
It's not hard to obtain. It's about how much we know about the process, because people can jump into projects without knowing that there is a huge infrastructure built by the United Nations, which we are all aware of. EPA is engaged in those processes. His Highness Crown Prince has been always present in those COP conferences. Everybody knows that there is a structured way of doing it. Everybody knows that to have an implementation, you need EPA, PIA, you need the authorities to be involved, you need the end users, you need the off-takers. It's just a question of us all understanding the structured way of doing them happening, and I am sure that everybody knows that there is a structured way of approaching those projects. For example, if you start with a project, there is something called the PIN, the Project Idea Note, which describes the project, the objectives, the CAPEX involved, the OPEX involved, and that project has to be registered somewhere with EPA, because EPA will have to monitor every environmental project in the country. And then there is something called BDP, which will show how the design is going to be made in accordance with the local conditions, the outcomes of those projects. Right. It's really everybody is involved in this project. I will give a very simple example. We've been working with the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research on what we call biofuel to biomass project. The biomass has been existing since ever in the wastewater treatment plants. If we convert that biomass into biofuel, what does it mean? It means that KMBC will not have to supply anymore, for example, its own fossil fuel to the public transportation. Oh, okay. That's one advantage. The second advantage, Ministry of Public Works does not have to transport that solid waste into the landfills. So there are many stakeholders normally are involved in the process, between those who owns the what we call the sustainable carbon materials, which we need to transform, and the off-takers who needs to off-take the end product and use it in the country.
It's like a much more aware recycling, kind of approach.
That's why we call it circular economy, because it's everything around taking waste, converting it into a product that the country benefits from. As a company and as directed by the chairman and the board for the last 6 years, when we've been promoting a project, we call it in the oil sector, the enhanced oil recovery or enhanced gas recovery. The project, basically it's about injecting CO2 into the oil wells to enhance the productivity of oil. There are hundreds of, maybe billions of dollars of old oil in place that we can take out since the oil wells have lost their pressure. The process is that you inject CO2 to make the oil less viscous. And then we pressurize the oil with water to extract the oil outside those oil wells. So if you look at it, we have a small environmental project as a company, as Gulf Cryo, and we have taken it all the way to the oil wells of Kuwait to increase the oil and gas recovery. We are increasing oil production, and we are releasing the associated natural gas, which is basic or used to be used for pressurizing the wells, for the country to use for example, power generation. So from wasted gas, the CO2 emissions, all the way to an enhancement material for oil production.
Oh, it's mashallah, it's like a more efficient filtering process.
Yes, and you can look at this project in several ways. That's why we all know the process, but when you see them on the ground, you'll understand how they work. If I don't do this, what's the option of KOC, for example? Is to go and drill in new wells. It's to go and invest in a new infrastructure to extract more oil. Today, it has been specified, it has been stated publicly that Kuwait will increase its oil production by 13% through the enhancement of oil and gas recovery, rather than going for new drilling activities and new CAPEX investments. So you can see from emissions all the way to an enhancement of production, which will be reflected on at the GDP level of the country.
And honestly, I'm really, I would say, shocked and surprised and amazed at how technology is basically taking something we've already been doing and making it even better.
What should make us even more proud that Kuwait today is the world reference for this.
MashaAllah.
We have done trials over the last consistent work for the last 18 months. Now, it has shown success that the country is moving through a tendering process to make that kind of a proven technology-driven way of enhancement to save the country spending more money on capex and to enhance oil and gas recovery.
Mashallah.
And Kuwait today is definitely the reference for this kind of work.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And you know, speaking of making tremendous progress, like I know with every project the stars has to align. So what are the right vehicles that have to move in order for these projects to, you know, fall into the right path?
I will refer back to the same example of KOC. Today, when we inject CO2 into the oil wells, 40 to 70% of that CO2 gets sequestrated inside those oil wells for several reasons, chemical reasons and mechanical reasons. Who is in charge of calculating those volumes of sequestration? It's the Environment Public Authority, right? Who is going to benefit from the enhancement of oil production? Definitely it's it's Kuwait Oil Company and then the national GDP of the country. We can't work alone without aligning the authorities of Kuwait, who is working with the United Nations to record those projects and to show that Kuwait is progressing at that front. So when His Highness the Crown Prince commits in his statements that Kuwait is really committed to reduce emissions, there should be someone to reflect those commitments and facts. So we need to be aligned with several authorities, because at the end of in November of each year there is a statement that goes through the COP conferences about what Kuwait and every other country does to reduce the carbon emissions.
And so what would you say is the best thing to do to keep momentum going, right? To strike when the iron is hot and keep it there?
To keep the momentum, as I mentioned earlier, we need one or two pilots. Today we have the biggest worldwide pilot for the enhanced and gas recovery, which is a cooperation between KOC, Gulf Cryo, and the oil and gas service providers. We are the world reference, there is no doubt about it. But there are many other projects needs to be realized, like for example, converting CO2 from the furnaces into soda ash, which is raw material for the production of glass. There is another process for taking CO2 emissions with the calcium hydroxide waste to convert it into calcium carbonate. We need to prove the concept. We need to prove the concept technically and commercially to keep the momentum. When people see those catalysts on the ground, everyone will realize how the constitutional authorities they benefit, how the industrial partners benefit, how the country benefits. I will give you another even regional example about how Kuwait is not having only impact inside Kuwait but outside Kuwait. We are the largest CO2 producers in the Middle East from the carbon emissions in Kuwait. When I managed to shut down for example, the CO2 burner in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, I am not only benefiting Kuwait, I'm even benefiting the industrial partner in Saudi Arabia who stopped burning, for example, kerosene, who reversed the kerosene to Aramco, and in Qatar who reversed the kerosene to Qatar Petroleum, for example, or Qatar Gas. The model of Kuwait is so advanced today, and we need to keep that pioneer position by showing more and more pilots in the ground to prove the concept, because we have spent more than $100 million, as I mentioned in my earlier interview, to be where we are today. Today I can assure everyone that Kuwait and Gulf Cryo are iconic at this front.
And you know, all we have to say about that is alhamdulillah, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. And also, Abdallah Dalab, I'd like to thank you for honoring us with your time here and, you know, educating us all about this and being our guest on Good Morning Kuwait.
It has been my pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And also thank you to the dear viewers. Again, we'd like to thank our guest, Abdallah Dalab, Strategic Relationship Director. We are going to take a break, so stay tuned.